The room was too quiet for a moment that was about to change everything. Claire Whitmore sat on the edge of a leather chair in a glass-walled law office overlooking Midtown Manhattan, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Below the windows, traffic moved like nothing in the world could stop it. Inside, time felt suspended. The faint hum of the air conditioner, the soft tick of a silver wall clock, the rustle of paper as a lawyer adjusted a folder. Every sound felt sharpened, dangerous. Across the polished conference table sat Vanessa Whitmore. Vanessa didn't look like someone who had just lost her father. She looked composed, perfectly composed. Her tailored black blazer hugged her shoulders like armor, and her expression was calm in a way that made Claire's stomach twist. Not grief, control. Claire glanced at her husband, Michael. He wouldn't meet her eyes. His hands were clasped together, knuckles pale, as if he were bracing for impact. Claire told herself it was just nerves. People grieved differently. Families got tense around money. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the way Vanessa smiled when the attorney cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore," the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses, "as executor of the estate, I'll begin by reading the final terms of your father's trust." Claire barely listened at first. She wasn't here for money. She had told herself that over and over. She was here to support Michael, to sit quietly, to go home afterward and start figuring out what came next as a family. Then she heard the number, $10 million. The lawyer said evenly, as if he were discussing office supplies. Claire felt the word hit her chest before her mind could catch up. 10 million. She inhaled slowly, her heart pounding, and turned instinctively toward Michael. This was his inheritance, their future, their safety net. The sole beneficiary, the lawyer continued, is Ms. Vanessa Whitmore. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire's breath caught. She looked from the lawyer to Vanessa, waiting for clarification. A mistake. A second page. Something. Nothing came. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs with deliberate ease. She finally turned to Claire, her eyes cool, almost pitying. Michael's voice came out hoarse. "What does that mean? For us?" The lawyer hesitated just a fraction, long enough for dread to bloom. "It means," he said carefully, "that all residential property tied to the trust will transfer to Ms. Whitmore within 72 hours. Claire's vision blurred. "Our house," she whispered. Vanessa's smile sharpened. "Yes," she said softly, "including the townhouse." Claire felt the floor tilt beneath her. "But I live there." Vanessa shrugged, a small, elegant motion. Not for long. That was when Claire understood something was deeply wrong. This wasn't grief. This wasn't chaos. This had been planned. Vanessa leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough to sound kind. "You should start packing tonight," she said. "I'd hate for this to get uncomfortable." Claire opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out, and she didn't know it yet. But in that exact moment, homeless, betrayed, and invisible, the game Vanessa thought she had already won was only just beginning. Claire didn't remember standing up, only the sudden scrape of her chair against the polished floor. The meeting ended without ceremony, without condolences. Papers were gathered. A pen clicked shut. Vanessa was already scrolling through her phone as if nothing significant had happened. In the elevator down, Michael finally spoke. "I didn't know," he said quickly, his words tumbling over each other. "I swear, Claire, I thought Dad would split it. Or at least leave the house alone." Claire stared straight ahead at her reflection in the mirrored wall. She barely recognized the woman looking back at her. Pale, hollow, smaller somehow. "You signed something," she said quietly. Michael flinched. It was just paperwork. Vanessa said it was temporary, for efficiency. Efficiency. The word echoed in her head like an insult. They drove home in silence, the city blurring past the windows. When they reached the townhouse, two men were already there. One was a locksmith, The other held a clipboard. "Ms. Whitmore?" the man with the clipboard asked, glancing at Claire as if she were a stranger. Vanessa's car pulled up behind them. She stepped out smoothly, heels clicking on the pavement, her posture relaxed. She didn't look at Claire at first. She handed the clipboard man a document instead. "Change the locks," Vanessa said. "Today." Claire's chest tightened. "You can't do this," she said, louder than she meant to. "This is my home." Vanessa finally met her eyes. "It was never yours." The locksmith avoided Claire's gaze as he went to work. The sound of metal turning inside the door felt like something breaking open inside her ribs. Michael stood frozen, useless, saying nothing. Vanessa turned to Claire one last time. "I'll give you until tomorrow to collect personal items," she said. "After that, anything left becomes property of the estate." "What estate?" Claire asked bitterly. "Your estate," Vanessa smiled. "Exactly." The door closed. The lock clicked. Final. Claire stood on the sidewalk with a single overnight bag she hadn't realized she'd packed. The townhouse windows reflected the sky, indifferent and cold. Her phone buzzed. A notification from her bank. Account access revoked. She laughed then, a short broken sound that startled even her. Everything had been cut at once. The house, the money, the marriage. Vanessa had taken $10 million, and with one signature, she had erased Claire's entire life. That night, Claire slept in her car. It wasn't a decision. It was what happened when every other option quietly disappeared. She parked on a dim side street a few blocks from Central Park, the kind lined with brownstones she used to admire on evening walks. Now they felt like they belonged to another life. She reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go, her overnight bag wedged under her legs, her coat folded into a makeshift pillow. The car smelled faintly of old coffee and leather, familiar, unimportant, safe enough. Her phone lay heavy in her hand. No missed calls, no messages from Michael, not even a text asking where she was. She stared at the screen until it dimmed, then went dark. Claire pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and finally let herself cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just tears sliding down her face, silent and relentless, like her body was leaking something it could no longer hold inside. 7 years. That was how long it had taken to become disposable. She thought about the dinners she'd cooked when Michael worked late, the projects she turned down so she could follow his career, the friends she slowly stopped seeing because Vanessa always made it complicated, the way she'd believed that marriage meant safety, that partnership meant protection. She had been wrong. A sudden knock on the window made her flinch violently. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she scrambled upright. A police officer stood outside, his expression neutral but wary. "Ma'am," he said when she cracked the window, "you can't sleep here." "I'm not sleeping," Claire said automatically, then stopped. The lie felt pointless. "I'm just resting." He glanced at the back seat, at the bag, at her swollen eyes. His tone softened just a degree. "You should move along." "Where?" she asked before she could stop herself. The officer hesitated, then quietly, "I don't know, but not here." Claire nodded, swallowing hard. She started the engine with shaking hands and pulled away, the streetlights blurring into long streaks of yellow and white. She drove for nearly an hour before stopping in a 24-hour parking garage. She paid with the last credit card that still worked. When she checked again, even that was gone. Declined. Sitting there in the dark, Claire felt something shift deep inside her. The shock faded, replaced by a cold, steady clarity. Vanessa hadn't just taken the money, she had erased Claire on purpose. And for the first time since that glass-walled office in Midtown, Claire stopped thinking about surviving the night and started wondering how far this betrayal really went. Claire woke up just after sunrise, her neck stiff and her eyes burning. For a brief, disorienting second, she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw the concrete ceiling of the parking garage, the gray pillars, the faint echo of footsteps somewhere above her, and reality crashed back in. Her phone buzzed. It was an email. Notice of account termination, joint credit services. She opened it with shaking fingers. The message was polite, clinical, devastating. Due to changes in account authorization, her access had been fully revoked, effective immediately. Claire exhaled slowly, the air leaving her lungs like a punctured tire. She checked her checking account again, even though she already knew. 0. Not frozen, not pending. Gone. The small emergency fund she'd built quietly over years of freelance work had been transferred out overnight. Authorized by Michael's signature, her hands dropped into her lap. So that was it. This wasn't just Vanessa. This was him too. Claire drove to a cafe on the Upper West Side, one she used to work from when she needed a change of scenery. The barista recognized her and smiled. The usual? Claire nodded, grateful for the illusion of normalcy. She paid with cash, crumpled bills she found at the bottom of her bag, and sat by the window, wrapping her hands around the warm cup like it was the last solid thing left in her life. She texted Michael. "Where am I supposed to go?" The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I'm sorry. Vanessa says this is temporary." Temporary. Claire almost laughed. She opened social media without thinking, then wished she hadn't. Vanessa had posted a photo less than an hour earlier. A minimalist living room, fresh flowers, sunlight pouring through the townhouse windows. "New beginnings," the caption read. Claire stared at the screen until her vision blurred. The audacity of it stole her breath. Vanessa wasn't hiding. She wasn't even cautious. She was celebrating. That was when Claire realized something worse than being homeless. She was being erased. Vanessa wasn't just taking assets. She was rewriting the story, casting herself as the rightful heir, Michael as the grieving son, and Claire as a footnote, who never really belonged. Claire closed the app and set the phone face down on the table. For the first time since the reading of the will, anger broke through the shock. Not loud, not explosive, focused. If Vanessa wanted to pretend Claire never existed, then Claire would stop waiting to be included. She finished her coffee, stood up, and walked out into the city with no plan, no home, and nothing left to lose, except the truth. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion and fear, a dangerous thought took hold. People who rushed this fast were usually hiding something. By noon, Claire had nowhere left to go. She sat on a hard plastic chair inside a small public library branch, her laptop bag at her feet, her coat folded beside her like a boundary between herself and the world. Around her, keyboards clicked softly, pages turned, a child whispered too loudly before being shushed. Life continued with irritating normalcy. She opened her laptop and logged into her freelance platform, or tried to. Access denied. Her password hadn't changed. The email had. Claire's stomach dropped. She checked her inbox, scrolling fast, panic building with every line. There it was. An automated message sent at 3:12 a.m. Your account information has been updated per authorized request. Authorized by Michael. Of course it was. Every invoice, every client message. Years of work, gone in one silent decision made without her. She closed the laptop slowly, her hands trembling now, unable to stop it. It wasn't just money. It was proof that she existed, that she had built something of her own. A librarian glanced at her with mild concern. Claire forced a smile and looked away. She stepped outside and called the last number she hadn't yet deleted. Her sister, Beth, in Pennsylvania. "I can't," Beth said after Claire explained, her voice heavy with regret. "I've got the kids, and Tom's hours were cut. I'm so sorry." "I know," Claire said quickly. "I understand." She hung up before the silence could stretch any further. By late afternoon, the city felt hostile. Every restaurant window reminded her she couldn't sit there. Every apartment lobby felt like a locked door. She counted the cash in her wallet twice, then again, hoping the number would change. It didn't. At a secondhand store near 9th Avenue, she sold the last thing of value she owned, her watch, a simple piece she'd bought herself after landing her first big contract years ago. The clerk slid $48 across the counter. "Sorry," he said, not unkindly. "It's fine," Claire replied, surprised to find she meant it. She walked out with lighter pockets and heavier steps, the realization settling in with brutal clarity. Vanessa hadn't just taken the inheritance, she had taken Claire's leverage. No home, no accounts, no digital footprint, no allies. And yet, as dusk fell and the city lights blinked on one by one, something unexpected stirred beneath the fear. Vanessa had moved too fast, cut too clean. People who did that weren't confident. They were afraid of what might surface if someone looked closely enough. Claire pulled her coat tighter and kept walking, unaware that the worst night of her life was about to hand her the one thing Vanessa hadn't planned for. Claire didn't plan to see Michael again, but just after sunset, her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. The name on the screen felt heavier than any missed call before it. When she finally did, she didn't say hello. "I'm at the townhouse," Michael said. His voice sounded strained, lower than usual. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Claire replied. She surprised herself with how steady she sounded. "Please," he said, "just come. Vanessa isn't here." That, more than anything, made her go. The townhouse looked the same from the outside. Warm lights, clean windows, a life that hadn't paused just because she was gone. Michael opened the door, stepping back like he didn't know where he stood anymore. Inside, the air felt choosh, foreign. Vanessa's presence lingered everywhere. New flowers on the table, her coat hanging where Claire's used to be. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't think she'd go this far." Claire let out a short laugh. "You signed the papers." "She said it was temporary," he repeated, like a mantra. "She said it would protect the estate." "And me?" Claire asked quietly. Michael hesitated. "Just a second too long." That was the answer. "She told me if I fought her," he said, eyes fixed on the floor, "she'd freeze everything, drag it out in court. I didn't want to make it worse." "For who?" Claire asked. He finally looked at her then, and there it was. Fear. Not for her, for himself. "I'm sorry," he said. "I just need time." Time. Claire felt something inside her go very still, not broken, finished. She walked to the entryway and picked up her bag. Michael reached for her arm, then stopped himself. "Where will you go?" he asked. Claire turned back, meeting his eyes one last time. "Somewhere I'm not optional." He stepped outside before he could respond. The door closed behind her, softer than she expected. No slam, no drama, just finality. As she walked away, the truth settled with brutal clarity. Vanessa hadn't stolen Michael from her. She'd exposed him. And in losing everything that night, her home, her marriage, her illusions, Claire unknowingly made the first real choice of her new life, to stop waiting for someone else to choose her. The notification came just after midnight. Claire was sitting on a bench near the river, watching the dark water swallow the city lights, when her phone vibrated in her hand. She almost ignored it. Almost. A friend request, Vanessa Whitmore. Claire stared at the screen, a hollow pressure building behind her eyes. Against her better judgment, she tapped. It wasn't a message, it was a link. Vanessa had gone live. The video opened to a familiar interior, the townhouse living room. Claire recognized it instantly. The same white walls she had painted herself, the same couch where she and Michael used to sit on Sunday mornings, coffee balanced between them. Vanessa stood in the center of the room, dressed impeccably, a champagne flute in her hand. "New chapter," she said to the camera, smiling, "honoring my father by restoring the home to what it was always meant to be." The comments flooded in fast. "Congratulations. You deserve it. So strong of you." Claire's throat tightened. Then Vanessa added, almost casually, "It's amazing how much space opens up when the wrong people leave." The words hit harder than any legal notice. Claire scrolled. Someone asked about her. About the wife. Vanessa laughed softly. Oh, she moved on. Some people just aren't built to keep up. Claire's hands shook. She felt suddenly, painfully visible and erased at the same time. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a performance. Vanessa was shaping the narrative in real time, turning Claire into a footnote before she could speak. The live ended. The silence afterward was worse. Claire closed the app and pressed the phone to her chest, breathing through the sting. This was intentional. Vanessa wanted her to see it, wanted her to feel small, ashamed, finished. For a moment, it worked. Then something unexpected happened. Claire opened her email, not looking for anything in particular, just needing distraction. A new message sat unread at the top of her inbox. From Ruth Calder Eska. Subject: a question regarding a document you signed. Claire froze. Her pulse quickened as she opened it. Claire, I know today has been overwhelming. I'm reviewing several files connected to the Whitmore estate. There's a document bearing your signature from 6 months ago. I'd like to clarify the circumstances under which you signed it. Please call me. Claire stared at the screen, her breath shallow. Vanessa had been loud, cruel, certain. But Ruth Calder was quiet, and quiet people didn't ask questions unless they already suspected something was wrong. For the first time since losing everything, Claire didn't feel humiliated. She felt seen. Claire made the call from a quiet corner of a 24-hour diner, the kind that never quite slept. The vinyl booth was cracked, the tabletop sticky from years of spilled coffee and syrup, but it was warm, and for the moment, it was private. Ruth Calder answered on the second ring. Claire Whitmore, Ruth said, her voice calm, precise. Thank you for calling back. Claire wrapped both hands around her mug, grounding herself. You said you had a document with my signature. Yes, Ruth replied. Dated 6 months ago, signed at your residence. I'd like you to tell me what you remember about that evening. Claire closed her eyes. It came back slowly. Michael pacing the living room. Vanessa sitting at the table, smiling too brightly. Papers spread out like they were nothing more than junk mail. They told me it was insurance, Claire said. A temporary authorization, in case something happened to Michael while his father was sick. Did you read it? Ruth asked. I skimmed it, Claire admitted. They were rushing me. Vanessa said the lawyer had already approved it. There was a pause on the line. Not hesitation, calculation. Claire, Ruth said carefully, did anyone explain that the document granted limited decision-making authority over jointly accessed accounts and estate-related communications? Claire's stomach dropped. No. And were you aware, Ruth continued, that the authorization could be activated without your knowledge? Claire felt cold spread through her chest. No, I wouldn't have signed if I knew that. I suspected as much, Ruth said. That single sentence landed heavier than any apology ever could have. Ruth explained slowly, methodically. The document itself wasn't illegal, but the timing of its activation was questionable. The way it had been used, more so, especially given the sudden revocation of Claire's access across multiple platforms within hours of the estate transfer. It suggests coordination, Ruth said, and intent. Claire stared at the condensation sliding down her glass. So what does that mean? It means, Ruth replied, that I need you to do nothing publicly. No posts, no confrontations, and I need you to forward me every message, every notice, every change you've received since the reading of the will. Claire nodded, even though Ruth couldn't see her. Okay, one more thing, Ruth added. Do you still have a copy of the signed document? Claire hesitated. No, Vanessa took it. Ruth exhaled softly. That's all right. We have our own copy. When the call ended, Claire sat there for a long moment, the diner noise swelling around her. Plates clinked, a waitress laughed, life kept moving. Vanessa thought she had erased her. But somewhere inside the system Vanessa trusted so completely, a record existed, a signature, a trail. and for the first time since the locks had changed, Claire felt something dangerous and unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not hope, momentum. Claire spent the night moving, not because she had somewhere to go, but because stopping felt dangerous. She walked until her legs ached, then sat in the corner of a quiet, all-night cafe, her phone glowing softly against the table. Ruth had been clear. Do nothing publicly. Gather everything. Let the pattern speak. So Claire did exactly that. She opened her email and began scrolling backward methodically this time, not reading like a wounded wife, reading like a witness. There it was. 6 months ago, the week Michael's father was hospitalized, a series of forwarded emails from Vanessa, subject lines that looked harmless, estate update, quick signature needed, just housekeeping. Claire remembered the tone, friendly, efficient. Vanessa had always been good at that, making control sound like care. She took screenshots of everything and uploaded them to a shared folder Ruth had sent her earlier. One by one, the pieces started lining up. 3 weeks after the document was signed, Claire noticed a subtle shift. Her name disappeared from routine email chains with the family attorney. Invitations stopped coming directly to her. Everything went through Vanessa. At the time, Claire had told herself it was stress, grief, family dynamics. Now it looked deliberate. At 2:14 a.m., another message arrived from Ruth Calder. Subject, please confirm one detail. Ruth asked a simple question. On the night Claire signed the document, was Michael present the entire time? Claire swallowed. No. Michael had stepped out to take a call. Vanessa had stayed behind, smiling, patient. Claire typed her response carefully, her fingers steady now. Michael left the room. Vanessa stayed. She told me to sign quickly so we could get back to the hospital. The reply came almost instantly. Thank you. That matters. Claire leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The exhaustion was still there, heavy and real, but beneath it ran something sharper. This wasn't just a betrayal of marriage. It was orchestration. Vanessa hadn't acted out of grief or panic. She'd followed a timeline, created distance, secured access, then struck the moment the inheritance cleared, and Michael, whether through fear or weakness, had allowed it. Claire closed her eyes, letting the weight of it settle. She had spent days thinking she'd been erased because she was insignificant. Now she understood the truth. She'd been erased because she was inconvenient. Outside the cafe window, the city shifted toward morning. Lights dimmed. Delivery trucks rolled in. Another day began. Claire gathered her things and stood, feeling tired but strangely aligned. Vanessa had been careful, but she hadn't been invisible, and neither was Claire anymore. By the third day, Claire stopped feeling like she was falling. She felt like she was waiting. Ruth Calder called just after noon. I've reviewed everything you sent, she said. There's enough now to justify a pause. A pause? Claire asked, standing near the window of a small hostel room she'd paid for in cash. Yes, Ruth replied. A temporary suspension of asset movement. Quietly. Claire closed her eyes. Vanessa won't like that. Ruth's voice was steady. Vanessa doesn't need to like it. She just needs to keep acting the way she has been. That was when Claire understood. This wasn't about confronting Vanessa. Not yet. This was about letting her reveal herself. Ruth explained the strategy carefully. Nothing dramatic. No accusations. Just a formal notice sent to the trust's financial administrator requesting clarification on recent authorization changes. It would look routine, procedural, boring. But it forces movement, Ruth said, and people who believe they're untouchable tend to move fast when they feel pressure. Claire pictured Vanessa, confident, polished, already spending money that wasn't fully secure, posting photos, making plans, acting like the story was finished. What do you need from me? Claire asked. Nothing, Ruth said. That's the hardest part. You stay invisible. After the call ended, Claire sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank wall. Doing nothing went against every instinct she had. Every part of her wanted to warn Vanessa, to demand answers, to scream that she wasn't done yet. Instead, she waited. That evening, her phone buzzed again. A text from Michael. Vanessa says the bank flagged something. Do you know anything about that? Claire stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back 3 words. No idea. Across the city, Vanessa was already reacting. Claire could feel it. The silence was too loud. The sudden concern too fast. An hour later, a notification popped up. Vanessa had deleted her live video. Claire smiled for the first time in days. The mask was slipping. Vanessa had built her victory on speed, on the assumption that no one would slow things down long enough to look closely. But now, the system she trusted was asking questions, and systems didn't care about confidence. They cared about records. Claire lay back on the bed, exhaustion washing over her, but it was different now. Not despair, anticipation. Vanessa thought the story was over. In reality, the first crack had just appeared, and when it broke, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Vanessa noticed the delay before anyone told her about it. She sat at the kitchen island of the townhouse, sunlight spilling across marble countertops, her laptop open beside a half-finished latte. She refreshed the banking dashboard again, her manicured fingers tapping with irritation. Pending. She frowned. The transfer from the secondary investment account should have cleared overnight. Leonard had assured her it would. He always assured her. She picked up her phone and called him. It's probably nothing, Leonard said, a little too quickly. Internal review, compliance stuff. Vanessa's jaw tightened. That's not what you said last time. I know, he replied. But trust me, this happens. Trust me. Vanessa ended the call without responding. She hated uncertainty. She hated waiting. That was why she'd moved so fast after the will was read, why she'd cut Claire out cleanly, publicly, irreversibly. Momentum kept people from asking questions. She opened her email. A new message sat unread. Subject: Request for clarification. Whitmore Trust. Her pulse spiked. The email was polite, dry, legal. It asked for documentation related to recent authorization changes and requested a temporary hold on discretionary disbursements until verification was complete. Temporary hold. Vanessa stood up so abruptly, her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She called the number at the bottom of the email, straight to voicemail. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Michael. The bank says funds are paused. Do you know why? Vanessa exhaled sharply, forcing her voice into calm as she called him back. It's just paperwork, she said. Estate reviews take time. But they already approved everything, Michael said. They said they're being cautious, Vanessa snapped, then softened her tone. It's normal. She hung up and stared at the screen, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. This wasn't normal. She opened her social media app, then hesitated. After a second, she deleted the most recent post, then another. She told herself it was strategic, better to stay quiet until the hold was lifted. But deep down, a different feeling crept in. Not fear, suspicion. Vanessa replayed the past few days in her mind. The speed, the clean cut, the satisfaction of watching Claire disappear. Too clean. Her phone buzzed again, this time a calendar alert she didn't remember setting. Meeting. Estate Council Review. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. Vanessa's chest tightened. Someone had slowed her down, and the only people who did that were the ones who had found something worth stopping for. Across the city, Claire felt it too. The shift. The silence stretching tight. The money had stopped moving. And when money stopped, truth had a way of catching up. Vanessa arrived early. She always did. Control favored the prepared. The conference room on the 22nd floor felt colder than usual, all glass and steel, the city spread beneath it like something she owned. Vanessa placed her leather portfolio on the table, smoothing her blazer, rehearsing explanations she might not need. Leonard would be here. The trust administrator. Routine. Annoying but manageable. What she didn't expect was the extra chair, or the woman already sitting in it. Ruth Calder looked up from a slim folder as Vanessa entered. Her expression was neutral, almost bored, like this meeting was a formality she'd already resolved. Vanessa slowed her step just a fraction. "I wasn't told you'd be here." Ruth closed the folder without apology. "You weren't meant to be." Vanessa's smile tightened. "This is an administrative review, not litigation." "Not yet," Ruth replied. Leonard arrived moments later, his usual confidence dulled around the edges. He avoided Vanessa's eyes as he sat. That was the second thing that felt wrong. The trust administrator cleared his throat. "We're here to review a series of authorization changes enacted shortly before and immediately after the estate transfer." Vanessa leaned back. "Everything was executed within my legal rights." Ruth slid a single page across the table. "That depends." Vanessa glanced down. Her breath caught before she could stop it. It was the document, the one Claire had signed. Ruth spoke evenly. "This authorization was presented as temporary and conditional. However, it was activated permanently without notice, within 48 hours of the testator's death." Leonard shifted in his seat. "That's standard." "No," Ruth interrupted calmly. "It isn't." She turned another page. "This activation coincides with the immediate removal of Mrs. Whitmore's access to joint accounts, digital platforms, and professional income streams." Vanessa felt heat rise in her chest. She was entitled to informed consent, Ruth said, her voice sharpening for the first time, "which she did not give." Silence pressed in. The administrator glanced between them. "Given these inconsistencies, we've issued a temporary freeze on all discretionary distributions pending further review." Vanessa's hand tightened around her pen. "You can't just freeze $10 million. "We can," the administrator said, "and we have." Ruth leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Whitmore, I'd advise you to refrain from moving or liquidating any trust-linked assets. Any attempt to do so will be documented." Vanessa stared at the table, her reflection warped in the polished surface. This wasn't a delay, it was containment. Across the city, Claire received a single text from Ruth. "She's contained. Stay quiet." For the first time, Vanessa understood the danger of underestimating someone who had nothing left to lose. Leonard broke first. It wasn't dramatic. There was no confession, no raised voice, just a subtle shift. The way his foot tapped too fast beneath the table, the way he stopped meeting anyone's eyes. After the meeting, Vanessa followed him into the hallway, heels striking the marble floor with sharp, angry rhythm. "You told me this was airtight," she hissed. "You said the document was clean." Leonard pressed the elevator button repeatedly as if speed could undo what had already begun. "It was clean," he said, "until it wasn't." "What does that mean?" Vanessa demanded. "It means," Leonard replied quietly, "that someone noticed the timing." The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside alone. Leonard exhaled, rubbing his temples. Claire didn't just sign that document. She signed it under misrepresentation. Vanessa's jaw clenched. "She's irrelevant." "She isn't," Leonard said. "Not if she can prove she was misled." Vanessa laughed sharply. "She has nothing. No money, no platform, no leverage." Leonard finally looked at her. His expression wasn't reassuring. "She has a witness," he said, "and now she has Ruth Calder." The doors slid open. Vanessa didn't move. Ruth Calder. That name echoed louder than she wanted to admit. Ruth hadn't been assigned to the estate randomly. She'd been part of its structure for decades. She knew every clause, every contingency, every ethical trap built into the trust. Vanessa stepped out of the elevator without another word. That afternoon, Leonard received a call he hadn't expected. A compliance officer, federal level, polite, thorough. They asked about his dual role as financial planner and informal advisor, about his private communications with Vanessa, about the timing of certain transactions. Leonard answered carefully, but the ground beneath him felt unstable now. Across the city, Claire sat in the same diner booth she'd used days earlier, her phone buzzing with updates she didn't fully understand yet. Ruth called once. "Leonard is nervous." That was all she said. Claire stared out the window at pedestrians rushing past, unaware of the quiet unraveling taking place behind closed doors. She felt strange hearing their names spoken like pieces on a board rather than people who had controlled her life. Leonard wasn't a mastermind. He was a facilitator, and facilitators panicked when scrutiny appeared. That evening, Vanessa posted nothing. No photos, no quotes, no polished optimism. Silence was her new strategy, but silence didn't erase records. It didn't undo signatures, and it didn't stop the slow, inevitable exposure of a plan built on arrogance and speed. For the first time, Claire allowed herself to imagine the impossible, not revenge, reversal. Because the truth had a way of pulling everyone involved into the light, even the ones who thought they were standing safely in the shadows. The first official notice arrived 48 hours later. Vanessa was alone in the townhouse when her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. She let it go to voicemail, already irritated. When she listened, her expression hardened. "Ms. Whitmore, this is the Office of Financial Compliance. We're requesting your presence for a formal clarification regarding advisory communications tied to the Whitmore Trust." Formal clarification. Vanessa replayed the message twice, then once more, slower. This was no longer an inconvenience. This was escalation. Across the city, Ruth Calder sat in her office, the lights dim, multiple screens glowing in front of her. On one was a timeline. Not dramatic, not emotional, just facts. Dates, times, digital signatures, IP addresses. She traced it all back to a single night, the one Claire had described. Michael leaving the room, Vanessa staying behind. The moment pressure replaced transparency. The document itself told part of the story, but metadata told the rest. The authorization file had been altered 12 minutes after Claire signed it. Not edited visibly, embedded. Subtle enough that only a forensic audit would catch it. But Ruth had asked for one. She called Claire that evening. "They changed the activation clause," Ruth said, "after you signed." Claire closed her eyes. The confirmation felt heavier than relief. So it wasn't just how they used it. "No," Ruth replied. "It was how they built it." That distinction mattered. It meant intent. The next morning, Leonard Cross's office was visited by two men in suits who didn't introduce themselves until they were already seated. They asked for devices, for logs, for archived communications. Leonard complied. He didn't have a choice. Emails surfaced, messages marked personal, sent outside official channels, language that assumed speed would protect them, that no one would slow down long enough to notice. Vanessa received a copy of the preliminary findings that afternoon. Misrepresentation, undisclosed advisory influence, coordinated timing. She felt the floor shift beneath her feet for the first time. This wasn't about Claire anymore. It was about exposure. She called Michael repeatedly. He didn't answer. She called Leonard, straight to voicemail. By nightfall, the townhouse felt too quiet, too open. The walls she'd claimed so confidently now felt temporary, like a set waiting to be dismantled. Claire, meanwhile, sat on the edge of her bed, listening as Ruth laid out the final piece. "There's a morality clause in the trust," Ruth said. "Buried, rarely triggered." Claire's breath caught. "What happens if it is?" Ruth paused. "Total forfeiture." Silence filled the line. For the first time since the will was read, the outcome was no longer uncertain. Vanessa hadn't just taken too much, she had taken it the wrong way, and now the record would speak for itself. The final meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes late. It was the first time in years she hadn't controlled the room before stepping into it, and the shift was noticeable. Her stride was still confident, her appearance flawless, but something in her eyes had changed. Calculation had been replaced by vigilance. The conference room was full this time. 2 representatives from the trust, a compliance officer, Leonard's empty chair, and at the far end of the table, Ruth Calder. Vanessa took her seat without greeting anyone. "Let's get this over with," she said. "I have legal counsel waiting." Ruth didn't look up from her folder. "You won't need them for this part." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" Ruth finally raised her eyes, calm, unmoved. "We've concluded our review." The trust administrator cleared his throat. "Based on documented evidence of misrepresentation, post-signature alteration of authorization clauses, and coordinated asset restriction enacted under false pretenses." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa snapped. "Everything I did was legal." Ruth lifted a single page from the folder and slid it across the table. "This is the morality clause," she said. "Page 47, subsection C." Vanessa glanced down, then froze. Her breath caught just slightly, but enough. Ruth continued, her voice steady. "The clause states that any beneficiary found to have obtained or exercised control through deception, coercion, or material misrepresentation forfeits all rights to the trust." The room was silent. Vanessa looked up slowly. "You can't be serious." "I am," Ruth said, "and so is the clause." The compliance officer spoke next. "Effective immediately, all assets tied to the Whitmore Trust are frozen pending reassignment. Ms. Whitmore, your beneficiary status is suspended." Suspended? Vanessa stood abruptly. "This is a mistake. I built my life around this inheritance." Ruth closed the folder with finality. "No," she said quietly. "You dismantled someone else's." Vanessa's voice shook now. "You're choosing her?" Ruth met her gaze without flinching. "I'm choosing the record." The words landed like a door slamming shut. Vanessa sank back into her chair, the room suddenly too bright, too exposed. For the first time since her father's death, she looked small. Across the city, Claire's phone buzzed with a single message. "It's done." She stopped. Claire read it twice, then once more. Vanessa had moved fast, but Ruth had moved last, and that made all the difference. Vanessa left the building alone. No press, no entourage, no phone pressed to her ear giving orders. The glass doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, and for a moment she stood on the steps, blinking as if the city had shifted without warning. Her phone vibrated. She ignored it. Inside the townhouse, the silence was unbearable. The rooms felt larger now, hollowed out by the knowledge that none of it was secure anymore. The art on the walls, the furniture, even the view, everything suddenly felt like borrowed time. She poured herself a drink with an unsteady hand and sat at the kitchen island where she'd once refreshed banking dashboards with smug certainty. She opened her laptop again as if sheer will might change what had already been decided. Account access restricted. She slammed the laptop shut. Another vibration. This time she answered. "What do you want?" she snapped. Michael's voice came through, strained and unfamiliar. "They froze everything, the house, the accounts. They said I might need my own lawyer." Vanessa closed her eyes. "I told you not to panic." "You told me this was done," Michael said. "You told me Claire was out of the picture." The name landed like an insult. "Handle it," Vanessa said sharply. "That's what you're good at." Michael was quiet for a beat. Then, "I can't." The line went dead. Vanessa stared at the phone, realization seeping in slowly, painfully. Leonard was gone. Michael was unraveling. Ruth Calder had dismantled everything, with a few sentences spoken calmly, publicly, and on record. She scrolled through her contacts, stopping at names she no longer trusted. Every option felt risky now. Every move would be watched. That night, the first article appeared. Nothing sensational. Just a brief note in the business section about a major estate dispute pending review due to alleged misrepresentation. Alleged. Vanessa knew what came next. Investigations didn't stay small. People talked. Documents surfaced. The story would grow teeth. Across the city, Claire sat quietly in a borrowed room, reading the same article. She felt no thrill, no triumph, just a deep, steady release. Vanessa had taken control by force. Now control was being taken from her by process. And process didn't care about confidence, charm, or speed. It cared about proof. For the first time since she'd been thrown out onto the sidewalk with a single bag, Claire slept without fear. Not because everything was fixed, but because the person who broke it was finally falling. Claire met Ruth Calder in person for the first time a week later. The office felt different now, less intimidating, or maybe Claire was. She sat across from Ruth at the same long table where everything had begun, sunlight filtering through the glass walls, illuminating dust motes in the air. "You're officially reinstated as an interested party," Ruth said, sliding a folder toward her, "which means restitution." Claire didn't reach for it right away. "I'm not getting the inheritance," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "No," Ruth replied. "You were never meant to." Claire nodded. She'd already made peace with that. "What you are getting," Ruth continued, "is compensation for wrongful deprivation, loss of residence, loss of income, loss of access caused by misrepresentation." She opened the folder. Inside were figures, dates, clear, precise language, a settlement funded by the trust before reassignment, enough to restore what had been taken, and more importantly, to make Claire whole again. Claire exhaled slowly. "So I can start over." Ruth met her eyes. "You already have." That afternoon, Claire walked out of the building with a check she hadn't expected and a sense of closure she hadn't planned on. She didn't rush, didn't call anyone. She let the city move around her while she stayed still. She rented a small apartment a few days later. Nothing dramatic, just clean, bright, and hers. She bought a secondhand couch and a lamp she liked too much. She opened a new bank account in her name only. Michael tried to call. She didn't answer. Vanessa's name surfaced again briefly in the news. A follow-up article. Expanded investigation. Words like forfeiture and potential civil liability. Then the attention moved on. It always did. One evening, Claire met Ruth for coffee, not to discuss legal matters, just to talk. They sat by the window, watching people pass, lives unfolding without knowing how close they came to breaking. "You did the hardest part," Ruth said. "You didn't fight loudly. You stayed intact." Claire smiled, small but real. "I didn't know that was an option." "It always is," Ruth replied. "It just doesn't feel like one when you're losing everything." As Claire walked home that night, keys warm in her hand, she realized something unexpected. She hadn't been rewarded with revenge. She'd been given dignity. And unlike money, dignity was something no one could ever freeze, transfer, or take away again. The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They never did. Vanessa Whitmore watched them unfold in fragments, each one smaller than the last, each one stripping something away she had once assumed was permanent. First came the house. Not immediately, not dramatically, but quietly. A formal notice posted on the door. A deadline. The trust no longer covered maintenance. Utilities reverted to personal responsibility. The townhouse that had once symbolized victory became a liability she couldn't afford to defend. Then came the invitations that stopped arriving. The charity board she'd been shortlisted for postponed indefinitely. The private dinner on the Upper East Side was suddenly full. A brunch she'd hosted every spring went unanswered when she tried to confirm attendance. People didn't confront her, they drifted. The investigation deepened. Leonard Cross agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency, and with that decision, Vanessa's private communications stopped being private. Emails were quoted, messages paraphrased, not criminal enough for prison yet, but more than enough to poison her reputation. Vanessa hired attorneys, expensive ones, the kind that spoke softly and charged hourly. They advised restraint, silence, damage control. But restraint didn't stop the rumors. Michael filed paperwork to separate his finances from hers. He told himself it was procedural, necessary. But when he packed a bag and left, Vanessa understood what it really was. Self-preservation. The final blow came quietly, buried in a supplemental filing. The trust, citing the morality clause, formally reassigned all remaining assets to secondary beneficiaries and charitable allocations specified by the original estate. Vanessa's name appeared once, in a footnote referencing forfeiture. $10 million vanished from her future as if it had never been promised. Vanessa sat alone in a rented apartment that smelled faintly of fresh paint and nothing else. No art, no history, no evidence of the woman she'd been so certain she was. For the first time, she replayed her choices without justification. The speed, the cruelty, the assumption that no one would slow her down. Across the city, Claire read a brief follow-up article on her phone while waiting in line for coffee. It mentioned Vanessa only once, framed as a cautionary example in a larger discussion about estate ethics. Claire closed the article without finishing it. Vanessa's punishment wasn't spectacle. It was reduction. She lost access, influence, certainty, the power that came from believing she could move through the world without consequence. And as the city continued around her, indifferent, efficient, relentless, Vanessa Whitmore finally learned the truth she had spent her life avoiding. Winning by erasing someone else only worked until the record caught up, and the record always did. Claire didn't rebuild her life all at once. She rebuilt it in pieces. The apartment came first. A one-bedroom with tall windows and uneven floors, the kind of place that creaked at night but let the morning light pour in without asking permission. She chose it because it felt honest. No doorman, no marble, just space that belonged to her. She bought a simple table and a chair before anything else. A place to sit, a place to think. That felt important. Work followed slowly. Claire reached out to former clients. Not all of them, just the ones who had treated her like a professional rather than an accessory. Some didn't respond. Some apologized awkwardly. A few sent contracts without questions. That was enough. One afternoon, while reviewing a proposal on her laptop at a quiet cafe, a man asked if the seat across from her was taken. He was polite, unremarkable in the best way. They talked about nothing first, the weather, the neighborhood, the bad coffee. His name was Ethan. He didn't know her story, not at first. And when she eventually told him months later, he didn't interrupt or offer solutions. He just listened. Claire noticed the difference immediately. He didn't rush her healing, didn't ask when she'd be over it, didn't confuse interest with ownership. When he stayed over, he brought groceries instead of opinions. They grew into each other carefully, intentionally. The settlement money sat untouched for a long time. Claire used it eventually, not for luxury but for security, a cushion, a boundary, proof that she would never again need to stay somewhere she wasn't wanted. Michael tried once more to reach her, a voicemail full of regret and confusion. Claire deleted it without listening to the end. Some endings didn't deserve processing. On a quiet Sunday morning, Claire stood in her kitchen, barefoot, coffee cooling on the counter, sunlight warming the floor. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching her like she was something steady. "You look peaceful," he said. "I am," she replied, surprised by how true it felt. This life wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, it didn't prove anything to anyone, but it was hers. Claire had lost everything that could be taken, and in return, she gained something far more difficult to steal: choice. The proposal didn't come with an audience. No restaurant, no speech, no carefully staged moment meant to impress anyone else. It happened on a quiet evening, nearly a year after Claire's life had been stripped down to a single overnight bag. They were at home. They're home now. The apartment smelled faintly of garlic and lemon from dinner, the city humming softly beyond the windows. Claire stood at the sink, rinsing a plate, when Ethan spoke behind her. "There's something I want to ask you," he said. She turned, smiling. "That sounds serious." "It is," he replied, but his expression was calm, grounded, the way it always was with her. He didn't kneel right away. He walked closer first, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, close enough that she could step back if she wanted to. She didn't. "I don't need you," he said, "and you don't need me, but I want a life where we choose each other every day." Claire felt her throat tighten, not from shock, but recognition. Ethan took a small box from his pocket, opening it without drama. Inside was a simple ring. No excess, no statement meant to compensate for something else, just intention. "For the record," he added softly, "I'd be proud to build a future with you, only if you want the same." Claire didn't cry. She laughed quietly, the sound warm and steady. "Yes," she said, "I do." They didn't rush the wedding either. It was small, honest. A handful of people who knew them now, not who they used to be. Ruth attended, standing quietly in the back, smiling to herself. Claire caught her eye once and nodded in gratitude. Vanessa wasn't there. Michael wasn't invited. That chapter had closed without ceremony. When Claire walked down the short aisle, there was no sense of victory, no need to prove anything, only a deep, unshakable calm. She had survived betrayal, erasure, loss, and she hadn't hardened. She hadn't become cruel to compensate. She had chosen differently. Later, as the evening wound down and the city lights flickered on outside, Claire stood with Ethan on the balcony, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about it?" he asked. "What you went through?" She did. "Sometimes, but not the way she used to." "Yes," she said, "but it doesn't hurt anymore. Because the ending she'd been given wasn't loud, it wasn't cinematic, it was better. It was earned." So, the story has come to an end, and if you're still here with us at this moment, truly still here, then something in this journey touched your heart in a quiet but very real way. What Claire's story reminds us is not just about betrayal or justice. It's about how we respond when life takes everything we thought defined us. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Claire didn't win because she shouted louder or struck back harder. She won because she stayed intact when everything around her tried to break her. Another Stoic truth says, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." What looked like the end of her life was actually the doorway to a truer one, built on dignity, choice, and self-respect. And maybe that's why this story feels personal, because many of us have been erased, dismissed, or underestimated at some point. Healing doesn't always come from revenge. Sometimes it comes from walking away with your values untouched. If this story spoke to you, if it mirrored something you're carrying, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Your presence here matters more than you know.